my fellow comic book collectors, it's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the finale, the grand finale of this historic unboxing. If you've been watching, there's been some pretty great stuff all through. Pretty much every episode I showed either some major pre-code horror book or some good girl art, just some pretty major books every episode. So it's been, in terms of the quality, I hope this has been, it feels to me like one of the highest quality series that I've ever done. Usually I have a few big books, but, this has been consistently big books after a big book. Well, this last book is kind of like a grail. Like, not just a grail, but a grail in the true sense, maybe, is the best way to say it. There's only two or three known copies of this book. It is a historic book, and it's actually an honor just to have it in my collection. And when you see it, you're going to be like, what? You're going to be a little bit, maybe a little surprised by it, because it's not one that you might think of being such a valuable book, but it is a valuable book. Originally, this book sold at auction, coverless copy, for $4,500, and that was last year. The guy who bought it for $4,500, he relisted it for $15,000. So, kind of went through the roof. There was an auction for the same book that I won, and I won it for $2,000. So I got it for a really great price. I guess not many people bid on it. It was like, it kind of jumped up at the last minute, actually. And I was actually surprised that I put in a really crazy offer, like a bid at the last second. So I was kind of guaranteeing that I'd win. I actually put like a $5,000 or $10,000 bid at the end so that I would just win it. And I won it for $2,000. So I was quite happy about that. However, this book that I'm about to show, I'm building up to it. I got to build up to it. It's historic because of what it is. I've talked on this channel many times before about the Canadian Whites. The Canadian Whites were a series of comics that came out during the Second World War, when there was a trade embargo between Canada and the United States, that we couldn't import any US comics into Canada. So what we did was we created our own comics. And often what we would do is buy the licensing rights to like American comics and then just reprint them in Canada. And often when they would print the comics in Canada, because it was wartime, printing was expensive and they just really couldn't do much of it. So often they would do a couple weird things. One of the weird things they would do is they would print in black and white. And that's why the Canadian Whites were called the Canadian Whites, because it was white paper, white and black paper, white paper with black ink, therefore Canadian Whites. But another thing they would do is, even to reduce the number of pages that the comics would have, they would print smaller, they would reduce the size of the panels and like kind of miniaturize the pages to have multiple pages on one page. And they would do a bunch of things like that just to do everything they could to save paper. So it was a kind of an interesting time historically. And actually, Canadian Whites lasted beyond the Second World War, into the 50s. Early 50s, they actually lifted the trade embargo and allowed American comics to come back into Canada. So kind of a interesting time for Canada. And as I said, a lot of the books were just reprints from the US, or simul prints at the time, where they would just have Canadian editions because of Canadian licensing rights, where often they would print with different covers even. It was kind of interesting. But this comic is not one of those. It is a Canadian White, but it is a book that is unique to itself, where it's original content for Canada, and it's features one of the earliest female superheroes, actually, before Wonder Woman even. So this is maybe the number two, the second female superhero in comics, which is cool on its own. But it's the first Canadian superhero, female superhero, and it's just a major character. So I'm going to show you the book. It is coverless, but it is a major sale. So this is the book. It's a coverless copy. Actually, the original cover wasn't that interesting. It was just plains. But the character that made their first appearance in this book was Nelvana of the Northern Lights. And in Canada, we actually celebrate this character because it is a major historic character. And we have put the character on Canadian stamps because it's such a major historical character. So this is from 1940, June 1940, you can see, or actually that's when that happened. This says 1941, August 1941. Origin and first appearance of Nelvana of the Northern Lights. Staples removed, coverless. So you can see, it's not the most interesting book by itself, but inside is like the first story of Nelvana. And this is Triumph Adventure Comics #1. It doesn't say, but the artist, the story was by H.B. Ort, but I forgot who did the Nelvana story. But just a really major key for Canada, and it's a historic book. It's actually one that I'm quite proud to have in my collection, even though it's a coverless copy. Now I just gotta go out and find a cover for this one. I'd like to, if I could get the original cover, it would be great. But there are reprint covers that you can buy, and I might actually put with it a reproduction cover, just because I think that would, just present a bit better. Even though actually this original first page is actually not too bad. So this is just such a major book. As I said, there's only 3 known to exist. It's such a big book. It's just one I never expected to have in my collection even, because it's such a major piece of Canadian history. And I was just shocked that I was able to get it. And, you got this cool little thing on the back. Actually, I think it's not just her first appearance, but there's other characters that actually make their first appearance in this book. Like this guy on the cover, Spanner Preston. He's not a major character, but Nelvana is. And I'm just going to quickly tell you a little bit of the story of Nelvana. Nelvana was basically kind of like a sort of godlike character. It's actually based on Inuit folklore. And basically the story is that she has, her and her brother are these kind of like spirits that kind of have the power of the Northern Lights. They get powered up by the Northern Lights. And they are the protectors of the Inuit that live in the north, or the Eskimos, whatever you like to call them. And basically what they do is their brother was actually in a scandal kind of with the gods and cannot show his face to humans. So he always comes in the form of a dog. And Nelvana, she is this character with these like kind of wings, like she kind of looks like Namora a little bit like Namora. And you always see her with her brother, which is this dog. And basically they fight against evil white people. That's what they actually call them in the stories. They later changed that to being the Nazis. So just an interesting story in that respect. It's kind of funny that even back then they didn't like white people. So, but it was her fighting against these Nazis, and the Nazis were always doing things like killing all the fish, or like doing things to hurt these poor natives that were living in the north. So just a really interesting set of stories, very different than what what you would expect for superheroes of that era. It has a lot more folk elements to it and a lot more mythology related to it. So very interesting version of a classic superhero. And for Canadians, it's a major book. And I'm it's probably my most cool Canadian white in my collection. And I'm gradually building that Canadian white collection. So it's like I'm excited to have it. I think it's really great. I think this is like the biggest, in terms of history, this is the biggest book in my collection. And I don't say that lightly. I have like some pretty major books, but this historically is the biggest book. It should be in a museum kind of level of books, just because it's so rare and it's so historically significant to Canada. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell me what you think. Have you ever heard of Nelvana? And what do you think of Canadian whites? I'd like to hear the comments from you. And thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And bye for now.